Imagine walking down a long, empty hospital corridor, the sound of your footsteps echoing, yet you feel like you're not alone. Imagine the smell of antiseptic in the air, the faint beeping of forgotten machines, as a cold chill runs down your spine. Now imagine hearing whispers in the dark, and the door to the operating room slowly creaks open by itself. Hey there, if you're into unraveling mysteries and creepy tales, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because, honestly, you don't want to face these haunted hospitals alone. Hospitals, places of healing, hope, and recovery, can also be some of the most terrifying places on Earth. But why? What is it about these sterile halls and brightly lit rooms that chills us to the bone? Here's a chilling fact to set the mood. Many hospitals around the world report more sightings of paranormal activity than almost any other location. Nurses have claimed to see shadowy figures walking through walls, and patients have heard whispers when no one was there. One hospital, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky, is considered one of the most haunted places in America, with countless reports of eerie occurrences, including the ghost of a little girl playing in the halls. Now imagine being in an abandoned hospital where the very walls seem to hold onto the pain and suffering of thousands who passed through. The equipment is still there, the beds are empty, yet the air feels thick with something unseen. What happened to those souls who never made it out? Did they leave behind something more than just memories? Why are hospitals, supposedly safe places, linked to so many ghost stories? Why do they evoke such a sense of dread? As we explore the dark history, the psychology, and the real-life haunted tales, you'll start to see just why hospitals have become synonymous with fear. Hospitals today are places of healing, but their history is steeped in darkness and suffering. Imagine going to a hospital in the 19th century. No anesthesia, primitive tools, and the very real possibility that you might not leave alive. In fact, hospitals were often considered places where people went to die rather than to recover. Many of them were overcrowded, unsanitary, and ill-equipped, leading to more suffering than healing. In the Middle Ages, hospitals weren't even places of medicine, but served as asylums, often run by the church. The mentally ill, the poor, and the dying were left to deteriorate behind closed doors, cut off from the world. Death was a constant visitor. With every passing soul, it's no wonder these places became breeding grounds for eerie stories and ghostly encounters. Even as medical knowledge advanced, hospitals remained places where countless people experienced their final moments, often in pain or isolation. During wartime, field hospitals saw unimaginable suffering, with soldiers taking their last breaths in makeshift tents. These environments of immense trauma have left an imprint, fueling the belief that hospitals are haunted by those who met tragic ends. This history of death, decay, and isolation is why hospitals have such a sinister reputation, casting long shadows over their hallways to this day. Hospitals evoke fear, not just because of what happens inside them, but because they tap into some of our deepest, most primal fears. The fear of the unknown is a powerful force, and hospitals, with their sterile environments and cold machinery, represent that uncertainty. Whether we're patients or visitors, we often feel helpless in a hospital. Our fate is in someone else's hands, and we have no control over the outcome. Illness and death are mysteries that most of us try to avoid thinking about, but in hospitals, they are ever present. The quiet hum of life support machines, the sterile smell, and the clinical procedures strip away the comforts of normal life. This unfamiliar environment forces us to confront what we fear most: the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. Even the routines of hospitals, doctors' rounds, the sound of monitors, the sight of beds lined up in cold, impersonal rooms, can feel alien and unsettling. The uncertainty of diagnosis, the waiting for test results, and the fear of what might come next put our minds in overdrive. It's this combination of isolation, vulnerability, and the constant reminder of mortality that stirs the imagination, making hospitals feel like places where the line between the living and the dead is blurred. This psychological tension has made hospitals a fertile ground for ghost stories and paranormal experiences. Real-life haunted hospital stories are among the most chilling and intriguing. One of the most famous is Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky, USA. Originally built to treat tuberculosis patients in the early 1900s, it saw thousands of deaths due to the lack of effective treatments at the time. Today, visitors report hearing disembodied voices, seeing shadowy figures, and encountering the infamous body chute, a tunnel used to discreetly remove the deceased. The most famous spirit there is that of a nurse who allegedly took her own life in room 5002, her presence still felt by those brave enough to visit. In the Philippines, Ospedale de Santa Maria de la Pieta, also known as Clark Air Base Hospital, is another infamous haunted site. Once a bustling military hospital during the Vietnam War, it's now an eerie, abandoned shell where ghostly apparitions of soldiers and nurses are said to roam. Some have reported hearing footsteps, even when the corridors are empty, and seeing blood-stained gurneys that vanish before their eyes. Over in England, the Ararat Lunatic Asylum is notorious for its grim history and hauntings. Built in the 1800s, it housed thousands of mentally ill patients, many of whom faced brutal treatments. Visitors often describe a suffocating atmosphere, and there are frequent reports of poltergeist activity, unexplained screams, and figures darting down the hallways. These haunted hospitals are a testament to the dark histories and the lingering energies that seem to haunt their corridors, keeping their stories alive. Abandoned hospitals have become an iconic symbol in horror culture, and for good reason. There's something uniquely unsettling about a place once filled with life, now left to decay. The peeling paint, rusting medical equipment, and echoing silence of these forgotten buildings stir the imagination and create the perfect setting for ghost stories. In these empty halls, the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Without the hustle and bustle of doctors and patients, abandoned hospitals feel frozen in time, as if the echoes of their past still linger. The very fact that so much pain, suffering, and death occurred within their walls makes them fertile ground for paranormal tales. These are places where lives were lost, often in tragic or traumatic ways, and that lingering energy is what draws storytellers and filmmakers alike. From films like Session 9 to games like Silent Hill, abandoned hospitals are often portrayed as cursed spaces where the boundary between the living and the dead has worn thin. The isolation, the decay, and the history create a potent mix of fear and intrigue. The thought of wandering through these places, with the possibility of encountering something supernatural, is a key reason why they have become staples in horror culture. These haunted, decaying ruins invite us to confront the darkest aspects of our fear: the unknown, the unseen, and the unsettling possibility that something may still be there. Pop culture has played a massive role in cementing hospitals as creepy, haunted places in our collective imagination. Movies, TV shows, and books have long used hospitals as the backdrop for some of the most terrifying stories, making them synonymous with fear. Films like The Exorcist III and Grave Encounters have set the tone for eerie, paranormal experiences inside hospital walls, often portraying them as spaces where dark forces lurk just beyond the sterile surface. In these stories, hospitals are more than just settings. They become characters themselves. The flickering lights, echoing footsteps, and abandoned wings create an atmosphere of dread and isolation. Shows like American Horror Story Asylum take it even further by mixing real-life horrors such as cruel psychiatric treatments with supernatural elements, painting hospitals as places of both physical and spiritual torment. Books like Stephen King's The Shining and Pet Sematary also delve into the idea of medical institutions being haunted, tapping into the deep fear we have of these places. The idea that hospitals, where lives are supposed to be saved, could instead be filled with restless spirits or malevolent entities has captivated audiences for decades. These portrayals feed into our primal fear of illness, death, and the unknown. Pop culture has not only amplified this fear, but also made hospitals a permanent fixture in the world of horror, forever linking them to the supernatural in our minds. Despite the advancements in modern medicine and technology, hospitals continue to be steeped in fear and linked to the supernatural. One reason for this enduring connection lies in the inherent vulnerability that comes with being a patient. Even in an age of sophisticated medical technology, the reality of illness and the possibility of death loom large. When we step into a hospital, we are often at our most fragile, leading us to confront the very real fears of mortality and the unknown. Moreover, the sterile, clinical environment of hospitals can feel cold and impersonal, heightening feelings of isolation and fear. The constant hum of machines, the stark white walls, and the sharp sense of antiseptic create a setting that is both familiar and unsettling. This juxtaposition amplifies our anxiety, making us more susceptible to imagining the presence of ghosts or spirits in the shadows. Additionally, stories of hauntings and eerie experiences continue to circulate, feeding a collective fascination with the supernatural. As long as there are tales of restless spirits or inexplicable occurrences, the link between hospitals and fear will persist. Ultimately, hospitals symbolize the crossroads between life and death, healing and suffering, which is a deeply human concern. Even in a world driven by science and technology, our fears about health, death, and what lies beyond remain timeless, ensuring that the haunted hospital trope will endure in our cultural narratives. And that wraps up our eerie exploration of why hospitals are often seen as creepy and haunted places. Thanks for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through the shadows of healthcare history. If you enjoyed unraveling these spooky tales with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You wouldn't want to miss any of our future adventures into the unknown, would you? After all, who knows what haunting stories lie in wait around the corner? Stay curious and remember, keep the lights on.